What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets here, presented by Boom Fantasy Live on our FTN Fantasy YouTube page. Those listening on iTunes and Spotify after the fact, we greatly appreciate you. Always appreciate your guys' support. If you want to hop on over, subscribe to our YouTube page, smash the like button. Any comments, any questions, you can leave them there. After the fact, of course, the live show would be over, but you can always leave them in the comment section, and I will always circle back and take care of the people. We have a special guest on today, and I hope that I'm going to bug him all year long. Because this is a guy that follows all the sports, and he is crushing for us over at FTN. If you are a fan of the show, you already know who this is, and it is Prop God. You can give him a follow on the Twitter machine _ Prop God. I just tweeted it out myself, the show, and what I noticed from you, Prop, always crushing it, man, with the live bets again last night, is I saw a tweet that came through on your hot start to the fantasy football season. Are you kidding me, dude? You're like from Back to the Future here with the Sports Almanac. Our guy Prop God is up 37 units already in the National Football League. Week 4 just got underway last night, dude. Congrats on the hot start. 57 for 33 on props, 35.5 units won already. Man, welcome in. Thanks for taking the time, brother.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate that. So I kind of set a goal this year. Sorry, I'm sharing the link out real quick for the YouTube. I set a goal this year. I wanted to get to 100 units for the NFL season, just because I put so much time into it this year. I kind of felt like the research was different. And with us having Stats Hub now, it's like the best thing I've ever seen in my life, like data-wise. And I wanted to take, what's the word? I wanted to take advantage of us having it, and I wanted to let people know that we have it and how powerful it could be. So the season's off to a better start than I could even expect it to be myself. But I just give all the credit to Stats Hub, really, and all the other tools that we have. But it's been fun, man, especially for the live bets too.
Yeah, the live bets have been awesome. You and I were having some fun last night with some of the live bets. I love you and I are getting in there in the island games. We hammered Wan'Dale Robinson to begin. You had, Wan'Dale Robinson catching the next drive. I love those props that you were giving out. There's a big edge there, and we're following the games. We're in tune. It's a fun atmosphere with the FTN Discord as well. We had a perfect show yesterday, 4 for 4 on the props. We did have Robinson. We had the over on Ferguson and CD, and had to sweat out the over on the rushing yards on Dowdle. We got in early on the 37.5. I know that number climbed to the low 40s there, but we're not here to pat ourselves on the back. We're here to see if we can carry things over. But first, before we get going, we want to share some picks and some props with you guys. We do want to hear from our sponsors and our guy Quan. So he's been spinning the wheel. We've been doing 2 picks each week. We're 5 for 6 as we head in here to week 4. So let's see what Quan and myself have rigged up over at Boom Fantasy.
All right, so boom. Last week, we cooked, and we right back like we left something. With Boom Fantasy's Pick and Spin, you pick 2 players, spin the wheel, and win. Download the Boom Fantasy app for Android and iOS, and tune in to Mean Streets each week to see if I pick and spin and win.
There we go. So last week we had the over rushing yards on Alvin Kamara, and we had the over receiving yards on Marvin Harrison Jr. I like Marvin Harrison Jr. again this week, but if you saw the video there, again, if you're listening on iTunes and Spotify, the 2 plays this week over at Boom Fantasy, and by the way, use the promo code FTN over at Boom Fantasy. A lot of fun there, spinning wheels and picking props. This week we have Deontay Johnson over 60 receiving yards. This number's climbed a little bit. I'm still comfortable with anything in the low 60s. I think he lives in the mid 60s at least. Last week, he received 14 targets from Andy Dalton. You can thank Andy Dalton for all those targets. He got 8 of those passes. He had 122 yards, and he had a touchdown. And you're talking about some of the tools over at FTN Fantasy. You can see things like target share and ADOT, average depth of target. He had a 36% target share last week, which is a very healthy mark in the NFL. And there's no Adam Thielen this week. And we saw the Bengals on Monday Night Football. Their defense looks atrocious in their secondary. And then Prop, the other pick that I had in here is somebody that you like as well. Aaron Jones. The number there was 56.5. We're starting to see him climb a little bit. But we both like Aaron Jones this week in a fun little revenge spot back in Lambeau for the former Packer.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming in over in 2 out of 3. Tough matchup against San Francisco, especially on the ground. But 102 yards against Houston, 94 against the Giants. Now, the Packers defense, it'll show you on paper that they're 10th best in the league with only 105.7 yards per game. But you got to take into account how bad the Tennessee Titans offense is. Tony Pollard ran the ball about 4 times, so that's taking it down a notch. Jonathan Taylor went over 100. I forget who they saw in week 1. They went over. Saquon Barkley ran wild. Yeah, Saquon ran wild. So, yeah, I think we see the same type of thing with Aaron Jones. You already mentioned the revenge narrative. He's already talking about doing the Lambeau leap in the opposing uniform. So you got to love these type of spots. And usually guys come up and show out big in these type of spots. Him getting cut from Green Bay was surprising to me and going with Josh Jacobs. I mean, Josh Jacobs is okay, but Aaron Jones is still dynamic even at his age. So I thought it was an interesting move, but I love him this week.
Yeah, it was an interesting move. That was shocking, especially how well he played down the stretch, right? And into the playoffs. He was great against the Cowboys, ran all over them. He was great against the Lions as well, despite them losing that football game. He wasn't the reason why. So, yeah, just to add to that, they've allowed the 2 100-yard rushers, which you alluded to. He's averaging over 100 total yards. He has 12 grabs, and Packers have allowed the 5th most receiving yards. So he's a player through the air as well. And he is averaging 90 rushing, or he's had 90 rushing yards at least in 2 of his 3 games. So, yes, fun spot, revenge narrative and all that, but we just like him as well because of the matchup is pretty good. And hey, Minnesota's playing well. They're 3-0.
Yeah.
Brian Flores is calling him up, man. He made CJ Stroud look a little shaky last week, and he certainly did some good things to go. Brock Purdy, do you think the Vikings are for real or what?
Yeah, I think they are, and I feel like coming into the season, I'll say I was wrong about them. I thought they would be at the bottom of the NFC North. I thought it would be Green Bay, Detroit, Chicago, and then Minnesota. I didn't expect them to be sitting here 3-0. We can say that for a couple of teams that are undefeated to start this year. But I would say they're for real because I think we're seeing now that it doesn't take a great quarterback to win in this league right now, at least in the regular season. Now, when it comes to those big moments in the playoffs, we'll see what happens. But I think teams are finding a way to build and find systems that work for their specific quarterback, and then you play great defense, and then anything can happen. If you're forcing other teams to turn the ball over, then you're going to be in every game. And I think Minnesota will be able to do that pretty much consistently every week.
Yeah, 16 sacks leads the NFL. Maybe you stream their defense, you're holding on to them. Like, let's just ride this thing out because Brian Flores is a great defensive coordinator. And, Kevin O'Connell is a hell of a play caller. He's one of the top 5 play callers in the NFL, I think. That's why I had no issues drafting Justin Jefferson at the time, uncertain if it was going to be Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy. I'm just like, listen, like Kevin O'Connell is going to be a great play caller, and they'll figure this thing out. And Sam Darnold right now is a top 6 fantasy quarterback, and the pass attempts aren't high, but he's been efficient, and he's in a good spot to have success. So we're both,
and they get Addison back too. I got Addison in a couple leagues.
Yeah, Jordan Addison returns this week. Jalen Naylor has a touchdown in his first. I don't know if Naylor can keep that up, but he has found the end zone in each of the first 3 games, and we know JJ is quarterback proof, right? Just ask Nick Mullins from last season. So we're both on Aaron Jones here, Deontay Johnson as well. You got a couple other props you'll share. This is the card that I have. Some of these numbers may have changed. It's the perks of being signed up with us over at FTN Fantasy. I shout out to Marshall. It gave me a promo code for the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Show, but since Prop's killing it and you guys are hanging out with us here on the show, don't tell anyone, but FTN shows will get you a little bit of a discount there over at FTN Fantasy. But we put the picks in right away in the Discord channel. We put them in the tracker, get the best possible number here. So I'll just run through these ones quickly here, Prop, and we'll throw over to you. But Marvin Harrison Jr. at over 67.5 receiving yards. This number's climbed just a touch. As I said last week, I felt like last week it should have been in the mid-70s, and I feel like it's only a matter of time before, it's really high. He grades out great, of course, in our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, and why wouldn't he? The Washington Commanders have allowed the most receiving touchdowns to the wide receiver position and the 3rd most receiving yards to wideouts. Of course, they've allowed the most fantasy points to the position. And for Marvin Harrison Jr., he's 4th in air yards. He's 7th in air yard share. Again, 2 tools you can see over at FTN Fantasy in our stats hub. And he's 6th in average depth of target. So he's getting targeted down the field. And you saw the explosiveness after that second touchdown he had in week number 2, the catch and run, which he dove into the end zone. So it should be a fun game against Washington. Could see some points there. I'm in on Terry as well. McLaurin at over 54.5 receiving yards. All of a sudden, he leads the NFL in air yard share. I know that Jaden Daniels has been not checking it down, but it's been a low ADOT, but certainly the playbook opened up in game number 3, and he was torching the Bengals. So in on him as well. And then you see Deontay Johnson, we already touched on. Aaron Jones already touched on. And George Pickens. I've been talking about this over the past couple of weeks, prop with George Pickens. It just takes a couple plays, right? The matchup is fine against the Colts. He led the NFL in yards per catch. He topped this number in week 1 and week 3. We have him for roughly 70 receiving yards. His number's in around 50. I would take anything above 55 if it jumps up that high, and I don't think that it will. But Fields is really just focusing in on him. And because of his big playability, I mean, last week, in week 2, he had to deal with Patrick Surtain. There's no corner on the Colts that are going to rough him up. So I'm in on George Pickens over. And I know you like Stephon. I like both Stephon and Nico this week. No Tank Dell. And that Jags secondary, man, Jacksonville in general prop, they're just a mess right now.
Just a mess. And I wasn't expecting them to be this bad, especially not Trevor Lawrence after getting paid. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about Jacksonville at this point, besides I'm going to continue to fade that defense. So I'm definitely on board with you there.
What about Stephon Diggs here? You got a good number for 6 catches.
Yeah, we actually got a better number in the Discord if for the members. I think when I gave it out, it was like plus 105 yesterday. Nice. So coming down, you getting minus 130 on DraftKings now. So it's adding that juice, and it's just the volume for Diggs in general is going to remain high. I feel coming off of last week, he had I think he had 10 catches, 98 yards, something like that. Without Tank Dell, it's going to be Diggs and Nico. And I like to attack I look at Nico and Tank as the guys who can take the top off of the defense, but Diggs is going to be that reliable like possession receiver for Stroud. So I think he'll continue to be able to rack up receptions all year long.
Yeah, I do too. He's kind of been, the red zone guy for him too early on in the season. And as I mentioned, no Tank Dell. A little bit later on the show, we'll roll through some of the injuries. There's some big time injuries, and we'll talk some start and sits. But props here, so I want to talk some picks and some props with the prop god himself. Mention George Pickens. So we like Pickens. Again, just takes a couple catches, led the NFL in yards per catch last year. And we know that Jaylen Warren won't play this week, and he's considered week to week. So taking a look at Najee Harris this week, prop?
Yes, sir. And the thing with Najee is just a volume play, even with Warren. Warren's been dealing with the hamstring all season. I think this injury is a bit different, but look at his carries, 20, 17, and 18, averaging 18.3 rush attempts per game. They gave us a line at 64.5 against this Colts rush defense that is second worst in the NFL, 179 yards per game. Don't be fooled by the performance we saw from the Bears on the ground. The Bears' offensive line is terrible. It might be the worst unit in the league. So it's hard for them to generate any sort of ground game. When we know Pittsburgh, that's their identity. Play great defense, ground and pound. Now you have Fields who can take those deep shots off play action because of how deadly the ground game will be, which is why I love your Pickens look. And last week I took him for 70 plus on a ladder, and he dropped the pass. I would have had him there.
Nah.
So I'm not even, I'm a big Justin Fields fan, so I love what I'm seeing right now, and I think we still at the tip of the iceberg on what he's going to do in Pittsburgh. So I think it's a great spot for the Steelers in general. I like Pat Freiermuth as well. So I think those are the 3 guys you can bet on for the Steelers every week: Najee, Freiermuth, and Pickens, because the lines are just too low.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I gave Steelers plus 850 to win the division. It was like a small wager, like 0.25, and I even said with the subs, like, guys, like in my own pool, I'm picking Baltimore to win the division, but I just think there's such good value here on this number, and I think the defense is phenomenal, and the schedule is extremely weak to start. Then from week 11 on, it is tough. Like run through divisional opponents. They have the Chiefs and the Eagles mixed in there as well. But, Tomlin's a great coach. He's always had like at least a 500 record. I think Fields just needs to be around some stability at the coaching position. I believe in him as well. I'm a Fields guy as well. And I think he can be coached up. And we're not going to see Russell Wilson. Like, this Steelers team is 3-0. I like them this week as well.
I like them 4-0. And then they face Dallas with no Micah Parsons, maybe, and then no Lawrence. So, yeah.
Whew, that might be a tough game for the Dallas Cowboys. This is why the prop shop is awesome. And I know you reference it all the time as well. At ftnfantasy.com up at the top, you'll see prop shop. I actually see like 63.5 and then 68.5 for Najee Harris. So again, it could save you a lot of time and a lot of cash, shopping around at these different books. You, of course, would take the better number and the better price. Caesars is hanging 68.5 for Najee Harris. So we're getting a little bit of an edge there. And you mentioned the rushing attempts. I like that one too.
Caesars is pretty sharp for props too. Like if I'm getting a better line than Caesars, it tends to work in my favor if I got a over.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we got a comment in here. Justin Fields, QB1. Yeah,
my guy Shottown. He's a Bears fan.
Yeah. Hey, what's his thoughts on Caleb Williams? What's your thoughts on Caleb and the Chicago offense?
Because we're on YouTube, I'm not going to share my real thoughts. I'll keep it PG. But no, I just really I don't want to put too much on Caleb because I feel like the narrative was that the Bears built, quote unquote, a super team or the best supporting cast a rookie has come into, and that's just not the case. When you can't get to those weapons, when you have no time to throw the football. When Caleb Williams has had a clean pocket, he's looked well. The same way Justin Fields looks well from a clean pocket. But you put any quarterback in that situation in Chicago behind that offensive line, it's going to be a lot of tough days. And I think that's what we're seeing. And we still see Caleb trying to be Superman and force those plays downfield when they're not there. And he's probably not used to struggling like this. So I think it's a humbling experience, but I'm not going to judge him just off of 3 games. You know what I mean? I'll give him time for sure. But the offensive line in Chicago is not made for a quarterback to succeed yet. Not with this unit.
Right. No, I don't want to be hard on him either because you just said it. You have to have an offensive line, and the offensive line is not playing well at all. They also have to have a run game. Before heading into last week, you look at our stuff rate percentage in our stats hub. DeAndre Swift had a stuff rate, a league high 38%. That means that nearly 40% of his carries went for 0 or less yards. And now we're seeing Roschon Johnson knock on the door. And I'm telling you, give him a chance, but at the same time, the offensive line is not going to help him out either. And I know Swift benefited from the offensive line in Philly. He was hit behind the line of scrimmage 26% of the time, which was the league best mark, right? Miles Sanders the year before, both of those guys were top 5 in rushing. They leave Philly, they leave the offensive line, and now backups are taking over. Chuba Hubbard took over last year for Miles Sanders, and now we're seeing Roschon here this early. But since we're on the Bears, Caleb Williams, I think he may just have to continue to chuck. He's second in passing attempts. The Bears are top 5 in pass percentage. And I know Keenan Allen, it sounds like he's returning this week, but I still like Rome Odunze. I have Rome Odunze ranked ahead of Keenan Allen in fantasy. And I'm looking at his props, 35.5 receiving yards against the Rams team. It's that low, dude. 35.5. And his catch prop, although it's juiced, is 2.5. It's 2.5 at minus 155. That will probably move to 3.5. If it does, it will be plus money. I may drink up a little bit of that juice anyways. You can do some sort of same game parlay if you wanted to do 3 catches and 25 receiving yards. You can get plus money for that if you wanted to.
I'll take him for 3 catches and DJ for 4, something like that to get you plus money.
This is a good spot against the Rams secondary. They're among the leaders in allowing yards, fantasy points to quarterbacks, and to wide receivers. So Rome Odunze, I'll transition here for a second. I have a lot of touchdown props. I tend to give 10. I put them in the order that I like. People like to, they like touchdowns. They want to bet some props. Yeah. So I got a few in here. And this is this is the third straight week we're going back to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Chris Godwin, but it has worked out. Godwin has scored every week. Dude, it was like plus 285 week 1. Last week it was plus 240. This week I'm still seeing plus 185. It's such a plus matchup against the Eagles in the slot. Avonte Maddox is among the leaders in giving up yards per route covered. I think Mike Evans gets right this week as well. But the number is better here with Godwin. Last week we had Amari Cooper at plus 200. A good spot against the Raiders. There's no Max Crosby. There's no Devontae Adams. They can't get a run game going. So Cooper is among the leaders in targets. He just had a couple bad drops. He's got roughly 30 targets. So Cooper at plus 240. Again, some chalkier plays, but if you're going to give me plus money for Chase like last week was plus 120, I'm just going to take it. This is Carolina this week. Last week, he had a get-right spot, and he had 2 scores. Marvin Harrison Jr., as I mentioned earlier, Washington, 9 receiving touchdowns already to wide receivers, and I just think he's an alpha. You love Diggs. I like Diggs. The number's not fantastic, but it's plus money there. Rashee Rice, everything just seems to be going through him. Last week, I'm not going to lie to you, prop. I had Kelsey. I'm like, all right. I was like, Kelsey and Rice, they were the same price. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is the week for Kelsey. I'm done now. Maybe he scores 2 touchdowns, but that's on you guys if you want to put your hard-earned bucks on Travis Kelce. If he does score this week, he's scoring twice. So maybe a sprinkle in the 2 TDs. I got Terry in there. And then some longer shots. Dallas Goedert, because it does sound like AJ and Devontae Smith is going to be out of this game. Roma Dunze, as we just talked about earlier, I think plus 300. I actually see plus 310 right now over at DraftKings. So those numbers aren't moving because people seem to like Keenan Allen. And then Xavier Legette as another long shot there at 3-1 with Adam Thielen sideline. I like Legette's props too. I put in earlier in the week over 2.5 catches and over 31 receiving yards. You should get it. Can't all go to Deontay Johnson. With no Thielen, somebody's got to catch some passes there in Carolina.
Yeah, I like actually like Chuba Hubbard over 2.5 receptions too. I think he got targeted 5 times like the last 2 weeks or something like that. So I think he'll help out in a passing game with the absence of Thielen. So I think Dalton just really unlocks the Panthers offense because I don't think they are as bad as we saw with them under Bryce Young.
Yeah, that's one that I like as well, having the tracker. 2.5 over on FanDuel is minus 130. So I know you got a lot going on. So we'll get you out of here like on this. Like you take a look at maybe the week 4 schedule here. Okay. Is there anything that catches your eye as like a dog or like anything else you'll have your eye on, with some other props or maybe some touchdowns there?
So I like the Jets when it was, I think, didn't it open up at 6.5? I thought it was a spot where they would win and cover at home.
7.5 now.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of taking big spreads like that though. I don't like that. I don't like the 8.
For what we've seen this year, the big spreads they don't cover. They just straight up lose.
Yeah, so I could see Houston rolling and bouncing back at home after being embarrassed by Minnesota, and I have no belief in the Jaguars, so I'm not mad at laying 6. I think the Texans can win that game by a touchdown. I do like the Steelers on the road, minus 1.5. I got some action in that game in the Discord. And the Phillies and Bucks game, I think this is like the classic spot where the Bucks find a way to win that game. I know you're an Eagles fan. I hate to say it, but I could just see it.
I'm with you.
It is good news for you guys with A.J. Brown questionable now. I thought he was going to be out another week or 2. So other than that, like touchdown scores, I was leaning Najee Harris. I don't have the odds in front of me. James Conner for the Cardinals.
I love Conner this week too.
Yeah, that's probably it right now. I love the primetime game we have on Sunday night too, the Bills and Ravens. The first quarter market, I don't know if you have been tapping into it yet, but it's crazy. Prop-wise for running backs, James Cook, over 0.5 first quarter receiving yards, plus 150. It should never be that high. The first 2 passes of the game last week went to him. So there's just 1 yard receiving in the first quarter.
Yeah, the offense is really going through him in Buffalo. The over 3.5 rushing touchdowns for him this season. He already has 3. And I was thinking to myself, prop, I was like, man, I know that Josh Allen steals everything. He had 15 rushing touchdowns, but 3.5 is so low for a starting running back. Yeah, where the team just turned to him. They became more balanced, more run heavy compared to what we've seen from Josh Allen. And he already has 3. I know he's got more than 3, but I think he's got a couple of receiving touchdowns, at least 1. But he's got 3. So just need 1 more from James Cook. So, thought I'd sweat that one out, but pretty pleased that he's already had 3 here through 3 weeks. The Najee Harris is plus money. He's plus 110 for him to find the back in the end
I hate
zone.
the value we get on touchdowns this year. It's so different than what we did last year. Yes. So
almost every running back is on the negative side. Like you can't really find a running back that's plus money.
The best way is to find like I did with a VIP last week, Derrick Henry for 2+ touchdowns, and that's how a matchup. I think that was like plus 550, plus 500, or something like that. But yeah, they take that on the betting show.
You said that on the betting show.
Oh, I did, right? Didn't I?
Last week.
Maybe I did. Yeah, I don't even remember. We work so much, man. I forget what I say on the shows. But yeah.
Prop will be joining us next Thursday morning in the NFL betting show. Free to check out here on our YouTube page. That at 10 a.m. Eastern. Appreciate you, dude. Any final words? Why don't you tee up some of the stuff that you're doing at FTN Fantasy? You got a lot of fun content.
Yeah, got a lot going on. So every Monday for the rest of the season, I do the trenches live on this channel, FTN Fantasy on YouTube. What we do is we go through like pregame previews of the primetime game on that Monday. And then we're live until halftime, giving out live bets like each drive. But like so you kind of get a glimpse of what goes on and VIP throughout the week for primetime games. And it's like that for the NBA season too. I'm excited for that. Other than that, I got my article pieces coming out. My wide receiver, the route tree, all with data from the FTN wide receiver cornerback tool. That'll be dropping tomorrow. My playbook article just went 4-1 last week. That's dropping tomorrow as well for the NFL. And I think I got a written baseball article coming out today in the next hour. So
nice.
Yep.
You're crushing it. Keep crushing, brother.
Thanks,
give my guy a follow _prop god there. He's got the 0 in prop and
no, it's a regular. It's a regular O now.
It's regular. Yeah, regular O. Gotcha.
Yep.
Just for those that were listening, but if you already follow me on Twitter, you can see that I just tweeted it out. His record hot fire here to start the season. So check out all the work. And again, you get all the picks from everybody across all sports over at FTN Fantasy with the subscription. You get some of those tools that Prop alluded to. And October is just the best, man. You got postseason ball, you got NBA, NHL, college basketball, college football, of course. Will be full swing into the NFL as well. So do appreciate you. We'll say goodbye to Prop God for now. Get that article into our guy DK, man.
Yes, sir.
And we'll talk to you soon, brother. So again, check out Prop God on the Twitter machine. And he is absolutely just crushing it, man. The live bets are so fun. The Discord is lit. This is like year 4 for me at FTN. And just the vibes are just so strong. And even last night, having Wan'Dale Robinson on this show for plus 125 for 5 catches, we just noticed that he was getting the ball. We talked into Discord. I think it was like after the first quarter, we're like, man, Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors are going to have 10 catches each. So I stayed away from Neighbors, but after he had the 4.5, I went to over 8.5 and then ended up going over 10.5 at plus 180, and props giving up those next drive props and first quarter props and second quarter props, and he's crushing it. He's hitting more times than not. And it means he's up 31 units already on props. I'm happy being up 8 or 9. So he's crushing it here. Mr. Nice Guy in the house. Yeah, we're going to do some starter sit questions here for you guys, doing a live show. Try to have a live show every Friday here to talk some starter sits. If you're just joining now, we just talked picks and props off the top of the show. And we had some touchdown props there as well. So you can always go back and rewind later on. Deesh, what's up, man? Miss you, brother. What's good, man? Getting Jordan Love this week or what? We're going to get a little Jordan Love. For this pick here, I'm gonna lean with Jennings. I like Khalil Shakir, and he's got all 14 balls that have been thrown his way he's caught, which I do believe is an NFL record for the first for that many, without an incompletion. There was an incompletion, I think, in the game on Monday, but it came back with a penalty. But he's been great. One thing I'll say is he definitely looks like the wide receiver 1 in Buffalo, but he is coming off the field in some 2 wide receiver sets. But Josh Allen's going his way. Allen's spreading it around, but I mean, I don't expect the same type of performance from Juwan Jennings, who's currently wide receiver 2. I do expect Brandon Ayuk to wake up at some point, and also, you have George Kittle, who is returning this week. But it does sound like Debo's out. Another week without Debo. The Niners are 10-point favorites. They will run the football quite a bit. But I lean Jennings. And just, again, No, I don't expect what he did last week. All of a sudden, he leads the NFL in yards per route run. But I would lean with him. In the Niners, I think they're projected for the most points this week, or the second most points this week. I actually like the under in the Buffalo and the Baltimore game. So yeah, that's the way that I lean there. All right. So there's a couple more here. Smitty, I'll get to you in a second. I just wanted to, man, I know you guys are aware, but if you're not, this is what we do here on Mean Streets. We kind of run through some of the injuries and try to get you the latest and really what it could mean. So there's a lot going on in LA with the Chargers. They could be without Herbert, Bosa, Slater, and Alt. So 2 other offensive linemen. It did seem like when I was reading yesterday or this morning that Herbert has a chance to play. I was shocked he played last week, given he didn't look 100%. And we'll see. Like, you're not starting Herbert. Herbert was a fade in drafts. I don't even really want to play him in super flex leagues, but this just is not great news for J.K. Dobbins. And I know Dobbins has been good over the first couple weeks. Last week, didn't like his spot against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Don't love his spot this week against the Chiefs, given the fact they could be down 2 offensive linemen and Derwin James, who's suspended, who's a player, and then Herbert's not 100%. So I think there are better options than J.K. Dobbins this week. For example, I can take a look, at the running back rankings. We'll be live and refreshed as soon as this show is over, because there's a lot of injuries here that we're dealing with here on a Friday in week 4. It's just been rough, hasn't it? Especially at the wide receiver position. But for me, like, J.K. Dobbins is around RB 27. It sounds like Walker will return, but if he doesn't, definitely Charbonnet over him, Pollard over him, Najee, Chuba, Zach Moss for sure. Jerome Ford looks like he's going to be good to go. Cleveland, the Raiders have some things going on. No Adams, no Max Crosby. Rachaad White, I'm sour on. Bucky's knocking on the door, but I would play him over J.K. Dobbins. Even Carson Steele against the Chargers inside the same game, I would lean with him. If Mixon plays, you play Mixon. If Kenneth Walker plays, you play Walker. Of course, it's all about context. You could have a couple other options. If Mixon doesn't play, I would lean Akers. Actually, I just play J.K. Dobbins. The only way I play Akers over J.K. Dobbins is if Dameon Pierce was ruled out as well. The Dallas Cowboy backs are fades. Dallas was trending up a little bit. He's got to score a touchdown to be worth it in your lineup. He did get a receiving touchdown. I still think Zeke has a role near the goal line. Rashawn Johnson, that one seems a little bit too cute. I do like him more than Swift this week. I got him 2 spots ahead of Swift. I would try to pick up DeAndre Swift if you could. If you have a roster spot, maybe put somebody on the IR plus or the out. Pick up Roschon Johnson, because I think he's going to be a hot waiver wire pickup. If he has a good day, it could be it for Swift. And you guys know I'm not the biggest Swift fan. He lost his role at the goal line to Jamal Williams a couple years ago. The Eagles didn't really trust him. I know they did the tush push a lot, but they didn't really trust him last year, and they moved on from him. And he's an okay back, and the skill set is like through the air, catching passes. I'm just not seeing a ton of that, and certainly didn't see it at all last year. Bucky Irving hamstring, says he'll play. We'll keep an eye. Devontae Smith is not going to play. I don't know about Lane Johnson here yet. That's huge, of course, to the offensive line. A.J. Brown was just spotted at practice stretching. I would be surprised if he suited up this week with the Eagles on bye next week. Man, that game was a bloodbath. There are a lot of injuries from the Philly side and the Saints side. A ton, man. Losing McCoy for 6 to 8 weeks is a huge blow to the New Orleans Saints offense. They lost Davis, they lost some dudes, and the Eagles did as well. Mixon did return to practice today, so it does seem like a good thing, despite also hearing about with Mixon. Also hearing about Dameon Pierce, right? I heard that he was listed week to week for Mixon, but him returning today in a limited fashion is good. It's a good sign. Deebo Samuel likely out. Kittle should be good to go. McBride is out. Evan Ingram is doubtful. Laporta returned to practice, so that should be good. Look, I wanted the Jameson Williams breakout. I was just begging for it, and it is crushed Sam Laporta at the moment. He had a slow start last year. I think he'll get going, but we need to see something. The tight end position is already awful. Like, I'm trying to figure out where to rank Zach Ertz the rest of the season. I don't even know if he's a top 5 guy. Right? I know that Mark Andrews isn't. So this week, you have Kelsey, you play him. I know a lot of questions I'm getting on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio is I have Brock Bowers and I have Kelsey. I have Brock Bowers and I have this guy. Maybe just roll with Brock Bowers the rest of the way and try to trade that other tight end. You want to play that game. Having 2 tight ends is rough. Getting a lot of questions about, Jaden Daniels versus Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels versus Lamar, Daniels versus Mahomes. Like, maybe you picked up Daniels or you drafted him late just because, in a keeper league, you took him, whatever it may be. I would trade one of those guys. You're playing that guessing game at the quarterback position. I think when you get to playoff time, you want to cover your bases, maybe have a second quarterback, have a second tight end, a second defense, to cover some of the tough matchups, and you get into buys. But, I would make one of those quarterbacks available. I think even with Mahomes being a mediocre fantasy quarterback, because let's be honest, that's what he's been like since the start of last season. He's been average. I think he was like 15, 14 in fantasy points per game last year. I have Jaden Daniels ranked ahead of him this week. So, he's got the name value. You could probably get something decent. Like, go ahead and look at some of the quarterbacks. Look who reached and took Anthony Richardson. Right? Like, I thought the gap in ADP was pretty large. These guys do the same thing, and I was always on point in saying that Jaden Daniels is a better decision maker and he's a better tosser of the football. And we're seeing Anthony Richardson. This guy's not even startable. He's not even running. But Michael Pittman's not worthy of a start at all. Doesn't look good. Got a 50% completion rate, leads the NFL in picks. It's not great. Again, that was a sidebar, but I would go look at the Anthony Richardson owner. I would go look at other owners, quarterbacks. Somebody's hurting in your league. Trade one of these guys, help out the balance of your squad so you don't have to make those tough decisions because, I don't want to make them. I make the wrong call all the time. You know how easy it is to mess up that, Kyler versus Jaden Daniels. It's tough, right? Quarterback position. It's deep. You can get some dudes off the waiver wire, but it's tough to make those calls. So that would be my one piece of advice. Maybe you trade one of those other tight ends. Kelsey pops off this week with a couple touchdowns. All of a sudden, he's tight end 1. He's tight end 2 on the season. Likely still a top tight end. He hasn't done anything since week 1. Anyways, it's rough out there at the tight end position. Deontay Johnson, good to go. Jerome Ford, good to go. Pierre Strong, not good to go. David Njoku's out. Jedrick Wills is out, offensive lineman, and also Conklin is out as well. So I still like Cleveland in this game against the Raiders. They have their own issues. Devontae Adams is out. Max Crosby, Michael Mayer is out as well. As I mentioned, Kenneth Walker does sound like he's fine, and Alvin Kamara seems like he's fine as well. And should see Tyler Huntley under center, and I think that helps Tyreek Hill. Listen, I have some Hill shares as well. Wish I didn't, but you got to roll him out there anyways. I got him as roughly wide receiver 21, 22. The upside is just too high to ignore unless you're in a shallow league, 10-team, or you can only start 2 wide receivers. I think you're rolling out Tyreek Hill on your fantasy squad. Now, Waddle, you can find some there can be some better options than Waddle. I wish I could tell you that Tua is coming back or not. He probably shouldn't. Everything I've heard is he wants to come back, so we'll see. The playoff schedule is extremely tough. I wouldn't really buy low on Hill, just assuming that, Tua would return or will return. The only way I would do it is if I was 3-0. After this week, I'm 4-0. I look at the Hill owner. Maybe they're 1-3, 0-4. They're desperate. Maybe you can just part with a different wide receiver. Like maybe you're loaded at the wide receiver position, and you can move on that way. Smitty's in the house. Zach Ertz or Schultz? Zach Ertz, Schultz, or Komet this week? Schultz has been much better TD odds than Ertz. Okay. You know what? I kind of like looking at Vegas lines. I mean, we have projections over at FTN Fantasy you could take a look at, but you're smart taking a look at projection lines, and Vegas knows what they're doing. They build big buildings for a reason. So you can kind of, split ties that way, and they're not always right. Heck, they had Wan'Dale Robinson plus 125 for 5 grabs last night. But they're not always right, but a good call there to kind of look at it. Not getting a line of Komet yet. You may not just until you hear news on Keenan. We gave a Roma Dunze touchdown prop and the 2.5 catches and 30 receiving yards for Roma Dunze. Even with Keenan Allen returning, I do like this spot for the Chicago Bears. I know the offensive line hasn't been good, but Caleb Williams is second in pass attempts. They're top 5 in pass percentage, and the Rams have coughed up like the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers and quarterbacks. I kind of lean Ertz. I think there's a higher ceiling with Schultz and Komet because of the touchdowns. So if that's what you're after, that's the way that it would go. I would go that way. I have Darnold ranked ahead of Goff, I think 1 or 2 spots. I am a Jared Goff owner in a couple spots, and believe it or not, I've hung on to this guy. I'd like to wait at the quarterback position to draft, so I have a lot of Jaden Daniels, and I have a lot of Brock Purdy, and I have a lot of Jared Goff. I was taking those guys with like my last pick, and Goff's been in a dome. He's going to be in a dome 14 to 16 games. He hasn't looked good, and he really hasn't at all. So our rankings and our projections do have a slight lean to Darnold. I would play Goff. I like the environment. I like the game. I think Chicago, you can't have Goff chucking the football 50 times. For fantasy, great. But week 2, 50-plus times against Tampa, not needed at all. You got 2 backs in Gibbs and Montgomery. You got a great offensive line. So teams are adjusting to Goff, I've noticed this year, and he's struggled. But I like this game more for points, don't you? Right? Seattle is pushing the pace. The Detroit secondary is playing brutal. Geno's playing great. DK's done a really good spot this week. So is JSN. Like a lot of props there. I've already jumped on Jameson Williams and DK. Those numbers are going to move. I guarantee you on Monday, we're not getting those. We're not getting 40 receiving yards for JMO. We're not getting whatever I put in for DK. I think it was like high 50s. That's going to move. I'll go with Goff. And like I said, I think Ertz is the safer play. And each week I've hammered the over 2.5 catches for him. It's a very small number. It was juiced last week. It's juiced this week. He's very much involved in the offense, but I'm like, if you are shooting for upside and the touchdowns, I think you go with either Schultz or Kmet. And for Schultz, there's no Tank Dell, and it's the Jaguars, and they've been torched through the secondary. As for Kmet, same sort of deal, torched in the secondary, but don't expect the same type of performance from Kmet as you got last week, right? Because if Keenan Allen returns, Kmet probably falls down to 4th in the pecking order. I like Rome ahead of Keenan, but it was just 1 week, but Keenan was getting some looks in week 1. You got DJ, you got Rome, you got Keenan, you got Kmet. At least with no Tank Dell, you got Schultz is like the 3rd option, could score a touchdown there for you. The thing with Ertz, he's not going to, neither of these guys are really going to get targeted down the field. There's more athletic ability at this point for Kmet and Schultz compared to Ertz at this point of his career. But when they get down in the red zone, you got James Conner, you got Kyler who's running. By the way, like Kyler's rushing yard prop too, it's 34.5. He has 45, 59, and 57 in the 3 games. His rushing attempt props at 4.5 as well, and he's had at least 5 in every game as well. But he may call his own number, Brian Robinson Jr., and then you got Marv. So I would lean. I have Kmet ranked higher. If that does anything for you, I do have Kmet ranked higher. Didn't think Keenan would play. I probably won't adjust it. I do think that the better opportunity for a touchdown would probably be with Kmet because of his big body. But know that Schultz may get more targets there. Leaning Ertz. Okay, also leaning Goff. Oh, you took that back. Leaning Kmet. Okay, there you go. Deesh, what do we got here, brother? I just saw your other comment. Olave with a hammy on a Friday? Wow. Man, it is tough. Anyone else having fun out there? Having fun still? Playing fantasy football? Yeah? Okay. I got a team that this is how I started my draft. AJ Brown, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Adams fell. I probably shouldn't have taken a 4th wide receiver, but I did. Those four. I don't even know what I'm doing this week. I don't know because I didn't need to hammer wide receiver anymore after that. Didn't know that about Olave. Hammy on a Friday is like AJ Brown from week 2. Hammy on a Wednesday, not going to see him until week 6. The Eagles on bye next week. I don't know if he'll play. Okay, need to. Half point PPR. London, JMO, Terry, Ford. You have Shar, but assuming Walker is back. So you need 2 of these guys. I think I like Ford this week, but I don't. I said last week no Cleveland guys because week 1 was Ford. They were down in the game. Week 2 was Foreman. They were up in the game. And then week 3, I had Foreman ranked ahead of Ford. That was wrong. I had them side by side. Didn't like either of them because of the mess, but I was leaning Deontay over Ford. And they actually trailed in that game. I didn't think that they would trail against the Giants at home, 7-point favorites. But it was Ford. Ford was getting most of the touches. I kind of liked them this week against the Raiders. Like, I don't think the Raiders will do a whole lot. And I think that maybe, they can lean on the ground game a touch. I think at this point, he's a little safer than JMO. But I think for me, my lineup, I would roll with London and Terry. I would roll with London and Terry. I was big on Terry this week. I was hating it over the first couple of weeks, but they opened up the playbook there for Jaden Daniels, took some shots of him down the field. I don't think he's going to be a big target hog. He's the only guy, and there's a bunch of other just dudes there. But I don't feel like he's going to be a target hog. They're kind of like they're running. The A-dot stuff has been short, but I really like that game. I gave the over on the receiving yard prop, and I think I gave the touchdown for Terry as well. Just want to see what the number was. So Terry made over 54.5 receiving yards, and I swear I picked him to find the end zone too at that number. Yeah, plus 200. I think that's a sign, Deesh, that maybe we roll with Terry in your lineup. I like Jameson Williams. For anyone, I'm trying to get him. Just trying to, he had one dud week, so I'm trying to get him from people in spots that don't have him. But I would go with him, and then I would roll with London. I'm rolling Terry out. I'm rolling London out, but I think Ford is maybe a touch safer for you if you wanted to go that way. All right. The GM Network. What's going on, Chris? You the man. I appreciate you. And yes, he is Jared Goffel. I love that. I appreciate you, man, taking the time to hang out here with us. Andrew in the house. Is there Ramondre, Brian Thomas Jr., Michael Wilson for the flexi as Kyler, if that stack does help PPR. Man. So I'm not going to play Brian Thomas Jr. Really like him. I'm willing to be patient with him in spots where I drafted him. He's like my 4th or my 5th. I'm being patient. I play him in some spots where I have to. I think he has the highest ceiling in Jacksonville's offense. I think we can all agree, right? Kirk is like that short A-dot. He woke up last week. I think that's really more about the Bills. I think to attack the Bills is in the slot. Let's keep that in mind. Week 1 was Greg Dortch, had a big game. Week 2, Jonnu Smith was running out of the slot. Big game before Tua went down. And then on this show, we were all over Christian Kirk, and he had a big game in the slot too. I got some good corners, so just something to keep in mind. Brian Thomas was taken out of that game. So I like the idea of the stack. Like, I understand, like, my dart throw this week, there's 2 Arizona guys. I like Michael Wilson more than Greg Dortch. I think there's an opportunity, more of a touchdown opportunity for Wilson. I think we have 2 scores from him, at least 1 in week 1. He had a good week last week. Other dart throws I have are like Darnell Mooney, Xavier Legette. I think we're going to be talking about Xavier Legette on Monday on the waiver wire. We talked about him a lot in the Sirius XM show this week, by the way, 1 to 3 on channel 87 for those that want to hang out with us. I would lean with Ramondre. It's as Ramondre Stevenson, I'm assuming here. It's not a good matchup at all. Last week was awful too, and I understand it may be frustrating. Andrew, it's like, I want to roll. You got the Pats hat on. You're well aware. You don't need me to talk about it, but the touches are going to be there for him. Some catches maybe out of the backfield. They're really going to stack boxes, and it's tough. Like, the ceiling is limited. The first 2 games were great. I don't know if anybody sold high. I love him as a back. It's just, I think until they get Drake May under center, boxes will just be stacked, right? But they've shown us that they want to run the football. They're committed to the run. I kind of like those guaranteed touches. The only way that I would go with Wilson, and keep this in mind for other questions in the future, that shoot for ceiling. If you want to shoot for ceiling, like if you went up against Ceedee and Neighbors last night, you probably need to go with Wilson, right? Maybe Kyler and them hook up for a couple touchdowns. It's the Commanders. They've given up 9 touchdowns to wide receivers, which is the most in the NFL. So that's where I'm at. I probably would play Ramondre, but if I was down 40 points already, I went up against Aubrey. Are you kidding me? All these kickers. Can we just, like, I can't with kickers right now. I feel like these kickers are outscoring these elite wide receivers. It's like I'm running into kickers every week, like 30 points. It's killing me. I feel like Jake Seeley here. Ban kickers. I don't mind the defenses, but my goodness. I'm here to help the people. I love it. I also have Daniel, so Terry isn't a bad play. Well, there you go. Yeah, that's fun. We are taking questions. We are taking questions here at FTN Fantasy. We'll be live every Friday. You can reach out at Chris Meaney if you have any questions at all as well. Let's get to a couple here. Start 2. Oh, man. You have Godwin and Evans. Aaron Jones and Dunze Ridley. You got some nice options there. I have Godwin ranked ahead of Evans, but these guys are both wide receiver 1s for me. I think Evans is in a get-right spot this week. I think he scores a touchdown. I think both of these guys score a touchdown. I had Godwin the last 2 weeks for touchdowns. Godwin was one of my favorite favorite wide receivers to draft. I couldn't believe that he's in the 30s. He's back in the slot where he's just had so much success over the course of his career, up against Avonte Maddox this week, who has allowed the most yards per route run covered in the NFL. I think that the Bucs, I mean, they torched the Eagles last year in this spot. Todd Bowles is going to dial up all that pressure. He doesn't have AJ. Didn't have AJ last time. Maybe no Lane Johnson. I mean, a lot of Saquon. I mean, a lot of Goddard. A lot of running on the Philadelphia side of things. Tough spot for them. The second road game in a row. I'd like to sit here and say play 2 Tampa. I really do think Evans is going to have a day. I think Evans and Godwin are both going to have days. I probably play both of them, and I really like Aaron Jones. You said you could also sit James Conner for Aaron Jones and start 2 of the wide receivers. Okay. I will play Conner. I think I have both these guys as top 12 backs. I think I have Conner ranked just ahead of Aaron Jones. I do. I have Conner ranked ahead of Aaron Jones. I got James Conner at 8. I have Aaron Jones at 11. Just a really good spot for James Conner. I know a dud game last week. That's what's going to happen to running backs when they play the Detroit Lions. People are going to pass on them. The secondary is weak. The rush defense is good. I would play James Conner. High total game, lots of scoring, can run on Washington. We just saw last week the big game from Zach Moss. So, yeah, good luck with your decision. I play the 2 Bucks. Play the 2 Bucks. I don't really love to have 2 guys in the same team, but I guess it's those 2 guys. The offense does run through both of those guys. McMillan popped up in the injury report today, so it's not good news for him. Maybe you can flip one of them. I would roll with Godwin, and I would consider flipping Evans if he had a big week. He's very touchdown dependent, and he's not going to get the same type of volume as Godwin. I do believe Godwin's going to be the one there. I think he's going to lead the team in catches and yards and targets. Evans is a fine player, but he does go through these highs and lows. In the last 2 weeks, they went up against top corners. And it's not like he can't beat top corners, but why does Baker Mayfield need to force him the ball when the mismatch is in the middle of the field in the slot? So I would move on from Evans, and it's probably not the best time to sell him because of the dud game. But if he has a big game, maybe you can move on from him, and then maybe you can give yourself more of a balanced approach there. Lime_head. Have to play Dobbins, Ramondre in the flex, 2 flex spots over Lockett, Hopkins, right? Yeah, Lockett's going to be. We're all rooting for JSN. Week 1, I think, was Lockett. Week 2 was JSN. They kind of reversed. Really like that game, but I would roll with the 2 backs. Hopkins had a touchdown last week. I would just sell high on him if you could. I know maybe you can't. I did expect more from Will Levis and Brian Callahan, but I also, the schedule's been very tough. But I also didn't think that Will Levis would look this bad. Like, some of the things that he's doing is really blowing my mind. I'm sure I'm not popular enough for fantasy receipts to torch me on my Will Levis improvement take, but by all means, I deserve it. Yeah, I would roll those 2 backs. Don't expect much, man. And you know this. I think boxes will be stacked against both of those guys. Yeah, I think if you were down, I may roll the dice on a Lockett over Dobbins, just given the high total game. That's what the one thing that gives me pause that I might do. I might roll out Lockett over Dobbins. What exactly did Lockett do last week? I think it's a big DK JSN game, which doesn't help you out at all. But yeah, 7 fantasy points, 46 yards. Like, he really does need to score a touchdown. Dobbins is getting majority of the work. I think he's a safer play. But Detroit has coughed up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. So some big stuff there. Any more questions here? So this is what I had earlier. I was starting to sit videos on our FTN YouTube page. You can follow us on TikTok and Instagram as well. I drew this up last night. A lot has changed. So these were kind of some of my sits, and I understand it's like all about context, and some of these may seem obvious to you guys, but I get a lot. These are like most of the questions that I've gotten from people. So Anthony Richardson, I have him ranked lower than most, like roughly quarterback 17. This isn't a pat my back type thing, but this guy was a bust for me. He was going too early, way too early in drafts. I covered a draft on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio's Superflex draft, and he went first overall, and it blew my mind. It just blew my mind. And I've seen him go ahead of Lamar and whatnot. I get the rushing floor. It was such a small sample size last year. You got Shane Steichen there as a good play caller. Things could turn around here for him, but I just don't like the matchup. The Steelers have allowed the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. They've locked down wide receivers. They can get after the quarterback with Watt. Joey Porter Jr. is instead. Completion percentage at 50% for Anthony Richardson. He's got a league high 6 picks. The strengths of Richardson doesn't play to the strengths of Michael Pittman, the short intermediate type wide receiver. We're seeing deep balls down to Alec Pierce. You see beautiful balls from A-Rich down the field. He leads the NFL in ADOT, average depth of target. That's probably part of the issue with the accuracy, right? When your average depth of target is like 13, 14 yards downfield, you're not going to connect all the time. So he has struggled with the accuracy. He's struggled with the decision making. Again, like I was always like, why would you take him in the 4th when you can take Jaden Daniels outside of the 10th, right? They both run, and the decision making is just much better, and I think a better arm. Maybe not as strong as a deep ball, but more accurate there. Anyways, it is what it is. If you have Anthony Richardson, you hold him. I don't think you drop him. You hold him, you just find a different option this week, at the quarterback position, and you hope things turn around. There's better spots in terms of the schedule. But you see Pittman on here. He's got 12, 14 fantasy points and a half-point setting in 3 games. Like, I'm not playing him either. It could happen for these guys where they link up and they're great. And if you're owners, then great. You feel better about that. But I also, at the same time, maybe you consider selling high. So, like, I have Jalen Hurts all the way down at quarterback 8 this week, given, his situation. But even Mahomes, I don't have that high. I have him like 9. So like I got Kyler at 1, Josh Allen, Lamar, Jaden Daniels, CJ Stroud, Burrow. I had Dak there at 7, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Fields. I have Geno Smith, Brock Purdy, and Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Caleb Williams, all ahead of Anthony Richardson. And depending on Love, even though Brian Flores is dialing it up and he's looking great in Minnesota, made Brock look silly, and CJ Stroud, I probably would play Jordan Love over Anthony Richardson as well. So that's where I'm at with the quarterback. Again, you see him on the waiver wire. I think you can pick him up. Things could turn, or I know you want to hear this. This could happen. Joe Flacco could take over. It could happen. And I know you want to develop your quarterback, but this could be a Bryce Young situation where he's fairly raw. He doesn't have a lot of college experience at all. He's not accurate. You want to keep him in there. You want to go through the growing pains as a quarterback. Steichen, you want that, right? He's on the sidelines all year last year, essentially, with the clipboard. But it could happen. And if it happens, you're going to want to have Michael Pittman then. Matthew Stafford against Chicago, right? Great game last week against San Fran. I do have respect for the Bears defense. DeAndre Swift, Rashad White, Javonte Williams. So really all about context here. The Rashad White thing is Bucky Irving's trending up. Rashad White, right? Another guy I wasn't super keen on this year. Loved him the year before, but another year of not being efficient on the running, in the running back room. He's one of the least efficient running backs on the ground since he entered the league. He's still a hell of a pass protector and pass catcher. So I don't think his role is just going to go away. He's still dominating the snaps. But Bucky's cutting in. He looks better on the ground, more efficient, new coaching staff, right? New OC, Colton Leon, like, he doesn't own anything to Rashad White. That was last year, Dave Canales giving him all those touches. So I'm concerned. That's all. But I still have him over like Akers, and I had him over Dowdle, and I have him over Braylon Allen. I still would play him over Roshan Johnson. But for Swift, offensive line, not good. Not good at all. It's getting stuffed in nearly 40% of his carries. It's mean 0 or negative yards on nearly half of his carries so far this year. We saw a little bit of Roshan last week. So it could happen. The switch could happen. Bucky could make this a 50-50 thing as well. Just kind of moving forward. I wouldn't start Bucky, but I just like own him, as he could take over, or he could turn this into a split. He could take the goal line role. I think Rashad will still have a role. And between the two, I lean Rashad over Bucky. Worthy, this guy's got six catches in 3 games. Sell high, right? We talked about the sell high after the week 1, right? He had 2 touchdowns on 3 touches. Got to sell high. One thing I did see that I like for Worthy, I mean, he's very boomer bust, clearly. He's going to be like that all year long. I wouldn't drop him. Maybe things get going. He's a rookie. but it's another guy that's going high in drafts. Like there's some boomer bust wide receivers out there. Jameson Williams, Rashid Shaheed. I would say Brian Thomas Jr. maybe one of those guys, at least for the first little bit. And then Worthy's on the bottom compared to those guys. But however, I did see a prop that I put in last night. This is me like 4 a.m. looking at props. I should be in bed. Xavier Worthy. I saw 0.5 rushing yards for Xavier Worthy at -110. He in week 1, he had 21 yards on the 1 carry, scored touchdown. In week 2, he had 5 yards on 1 carry. And then last week against the Falcons, given their running back situation, right, with Isaiah Pacheco down, they got Steele, elevate Kareem Hunt here. I still go Steele in the low 30s. I think what we saw last week, similar 15, 17 carries, 70 yards. I think, maybe goal line work, but I also think that maybe Kareem Hunt could get goal line work. I don't think Hunt's going to come in here and dominate touches. I actually don't think he has a whole lot left to offer. He should be owned. He had 9 touchdowns last year on the ground, sub 4 yards per carry each of the last 2 years, behind good lines in Cleveland. He could be a goal line back for them. Like, I still think he's like pretty kind of shifty, the breakaway speed's not there, but near the goal line, like kind of like a Zeke type deal could get in, and P. Ryan kind of resumes his 3rd down role. But 3 carries last week for 13 yards. So something that could happen, 0.5, we just need 1 carry essentially. And I think it's going to happen. Like, I think he may just get 1 every week. Just got to find ways to get him the ball in his hands. And right now, like 3, 4, 4 targets, 47, 17, and 17 is not doing it for me. So, yeah, he's a guy that I would consider sitting. Some of your guys here mentioned Pittman, Demarcus Robinson, right? Jalen Johnson's a bad man. Like, keep that in mind. Top wide receivers against Chicago Bears. Plus, we saw more Tutu Atwell. I'm not crazy about starting Tutu, right? I think that the offense in general could struggle this week. I have Tutu Atwell for references, like just a borderline flex. I would play Michael Wilson over him. I got this weird feeling about Xavier Legette, so I would play Xavier Legette over him as well. Play Darnell Mooney over him. I got Tutu Atwell at 54. So, like, I'd play him over to Marcus Robinson if that was like kind of your decision. And Keon Coleman, right? Just he's going to be very touchdown dependent. And anytime there's going to be a tough corner on him, I'm just going to shy away. But 0 when he went up against Ramsey. And it was like more Shakir and Samuel and the ball spread out there. So going to be very boomer bust. It's nice that he's had some moments to start. Allen looking really good, slinging that ball around, MVP stuff there for him as well. So I'll get to some starts here in a second, see some people hanging out. Then we're going to get out of here. Trone in the house. Trone Forest, what do we got? What 3 would you start this week? Tyreek Hill, McLaurin, JSN, Mooney, D-Hop, Myers with Adams out. I think your first 3 guys. Myers out, like, I'm interested in him from a prop standpoint because of Devontae Adams, but I'm not really feeling this Raiders defense. I think they have like 2-3 rushing touchdowns. Couldn't have been more wrong about Zamir White, right? I'm sitting here patting myself on the back for fading people, but guess what? I got a little Zamir White. Cool. McLaurin and JSN, I want to play in good spots. Mooney's a guy that I like. He's trending up. I don't buy Hopkins. I don't think I'm going to have Myers ranked ahead of Terry or JSN. I'm going to adjust my rankings after the show with these guys that are out, but I don't think I'm going to put Myers ahead of them. And Tyreek, this is the game that you got to play. Like, for me personally, it would just crush me if I played Mooney, Hopkins, Myers over Tyreek, and Tyreek had a vintage game. It would just break my heart. It's like, why did I take him 2nd overall? You know what I mean? Like, I just got to play him. Now, if you can do it, if you can live with yourself by playing Myers and Tyreek balling out on your bench, that wouldn't phase you, go ahead and play Terry, JSN, and Myers. The offense, again, they can't run. I've really only seen the ball thrown to Adams and Brad Bowers for the first 2 weeks. We did see Myers last week get involved. I don't think Denzel Ward will follow him around, but who else is really there? Ward didn't follow Neighbors around until the second half of that game last week. I play Tyreek. I think Huntley's decent. I think he's definitely better than Skyler. So, he can push the ball down the field. There's no, that game's against Tennessee, right? There's no Awuzue. I always mess that name out. Awuzue is out. He's ruled out, I do believe. That's where I'm at. Jaden Daniels is a league winner. Absolutely. He's a league winner. We're all over that. Caleb Williams going ahead of him. And it's just like, guys, no. Jaden's the guy. It may be Caleb for a dynasty standpoint, but Jaden's the guy. And he's not going to have a 91% completion rate. Like, he had a great game. I mean, the team hasn't punted or turned the ball over the last 2 weeks, but anyways, if you have him, you're good to go. I'm starting to panic on Kamara. I feel like he's a sell high right now with the rib injury and Miller coming off IR. Are you concerned? What would you need in return for him? I'm concerned in a way that McCoy went down, like their center 6 to 8 weeks. Like, they can't afford to lose him. They don't have a lot of depth on the offensive line. I'm not worried about Miller at all. Like, if you heard Dennis Allen talk about Miller, I mean, it would break your heart. He didn't have anything nice to say about this guy at all. Nothing nice to say about him. He's shown us nothing either. He's had multiple injuries. So if I was selling Alvin Kamara, and I had him as my RB1 last week, I have him as a top 5 running back this week. I think he's fine. I think it was more like, they're going to give these veterans. That was a rough game on both sides. Eagles and Saints lost some dudes. You're not going to get Saquon. Do you really want Jordan Mason? I actually don't think CMC is coming back, but do you really want to take that risk on with Jordan Mason? I'd rather have Kamara there. Breece Hall. You could get Breece, but Braylon Allen seems to be a thing. He's getting some touches. He's getting some opportunities. They're blowing out some teams, and he's getting a little bit more run. I would take Breece rest of the season over Kamara, and I would take Bijan. Taylor's not going to catch any passes. Taylor's not really going to catch any passes. He's not catching them. I mean, he's a couple years removed from being an RB1 overall, like, because he had 50+ catches at the position. There aren't a lot of guys. For me, I think that it would rank the rest of the season rankings for me at running back would be Saquon, Bijan, Breece, and then I'm at Kamara. James Cook, I view as like a top 7 running back the rest of the way with Jonathan Taylor. You could maybe get him if you wanted to. You can maybe do that move. Kind of same sort of deal. They're both going to catch passes out of the backfield. It doesn't look like Josh Allen's running as much. Had over 3.5 touchdowns for the season on James Cook. He's got 3 already. He's scoring touchdowns. They want to run the football in Buffalo. I would be fine to hold him, but he was one of my favorite targets heading in. I have some shares, and for the most part, he's my RB2. And sometimes he's my RB1. Taking him in the 4th round. He's RB3 in fantasy points per game last year. Still got Fuaga on the offensive line. I do believe in Clint Kubiak. The offense has been pretty good, so there are only a handful of backs I would make the move for. I'm looking at Ratcliffe's rest of the season rankings. He has him as 4, Kamara. I would probably lean Taylor maybe over him. Definitely not in a PPR league. And then, like I said, James Cook. I'd probably just keep Kamara over Henry. Probably just keep Kamara over Kyron. I love James Conner, but I'm keeping Kamara there as well. And Gibbs, Gibbs was a bit of a fade for me. It just, it's a 2-headed monster. Montgomery's not going anywhere. Should I sell high on Stephon Diggs? No, I don't think so. Tank Dell was that fade for me in drafts. I liked Nico and I liked Diggs. Tank Dell is going to be very boom or bust. We're seeing some targets for Diggs, some short intermediate type stuff, and some red zone things. So I would keep him. There were some buy low wide receivers that was on my radar this week. They all kind of popped off. Deontay, the minute that Andy Dalton was under center, everybody knew Deontay would be better. But Amari Cooper was one of those guys. Terry McLaurin was one of those guys. I'm looking at wide receivers. Like, who would you look to get, like, that you could buy low on? Could you get Mike Evans? I would do that. It's kind of like 2 guys, right? Mike Evans over him. Let's see some other wide receivers that are struggling to start. You couldn't get Chase. You couldn't get Amon-Ra. You're not going to get Marvin Harrison. Could you do AJ? Could you get AJ right now? Sell high. Say, hey, if AJ's out this week, he's out week 6. I would make that move. Go get AJ Brown. Garrett Wilson. No, I'm not. Honestly, no. Like, I have Wilson ahead of Diggs, but there's a lot going on there all of a sudden. Roger Stone, his boy Lazard, Mike Williams get ramped up. I'd lean Olave. You couldn't get Godwin. Just don't think it's worth it taking Hill. There's not a lot. Rather Diggs than London. Ayuk. Could you get Ayuk? I would do that. Maybe you can make that swap. I like Ayuk more, but I'd be comfortable just be fine with Diggs. Especially he's going to pop off this week too. So if you really want to sell him, you can sell after they torch the Jags secondary with no Tank Dell. Okay, so this is one here, Demetrius, that I could live with myself if I benched Tyreek for Godwin. So I would do it. And my rankings say it. I would do it. Yeah, man, Godwin's going late in drafts, so like that's a scenario people may have, right? They may have a lot of Godwin and as their third or fourth wide receiver. Touchdown in every game, back in the slot where he excels. Great matchup against Vontae Maddox, coughed up the most yards per run covered. Yeah. This feeling Tyreek will be fine this week, but I can get behind that one, dude. Vikings or Dolphins. Dolphins up against Will Levis. Vikings up against, do we know is it Jordan Love yet? Been on the show here for the past hour. I'm not really sure about Jordan Love. Still listening to questionable. I would roll with the Vikings. I know Levis has done some dumb stuff, but man, how could you not roll with Brian Flores? Like, these guys are just in a groove right now. And don't leave the NFL in sacks with 16. Yeah. If Debo plays, you play him. I just want to say that about a lot of these guys. If Debo plays, you play him. If AJ Brown plays, you play him. All these top tier guys, you play them when they're hurt. You draft them for a reason. They're not going to risk it if they're not near 100%. I don't think Debo's going to play anyways. Debo could pull a booby mile, so I'm kind of scared. That's hilarious. By the way, Friday Night Lights is awesome, Joe. The show is great too, right? Anybody Friday Night Show fans out here? We have seen some of this stuff before, so I could have backtracked my statement a second. I remember T. Higgins. You guys remember T. Higgins? Debo did it before, I think, didn't he? Wasn't he on the sidelines and he hardly touched the field? They don't need to do that against New England, right? They're 10-point favorites. Yeah, if it was like the Eagles or the Cowboys or some division rival, like they may play that sort of game. Like, hey, Debo's gonna be active, prepare for Debo, and then he doesn't touch the field. You roll out Jennings and you hope that he just has half the performance that he did last year. Wide receiver 2, Jennings leading the NFL in yards per route run. Do you want Jennings? Hey, he's a special player, man. He's shown us things when there's been no Debo. Kyle Shanahan's a great play caller and he's a great route runner, man. Juwan Jennings, but still laughing at that Booby Miles comment. But there was a game. Remember last year, T. Higgins? This guy just sat on the sidelines. He just sat there. It's like, why are you even active, man? Like, come on. That was super frustrating. And also, we saw that, I think, 1 year from CEH as well. He was just on the sidelines. I would play Juwan Jennings there. If Debo plays, I would play Debo if he played. I would roll out Debo. T. Hamilton, great the trade. These ones are always tough because I need to know the full context. Like when people say, should I trade Bijan Robinson for DK Metcalf? I'm like, like, well, what else do you have? Like, I kind of need to know that. You need to know the rest of the squad to make that sort of deal. You may be loaded that wide receiver. What do you need DK for? It's just an example, but I'll grade this one. Brian Robinson and Shakir for Devonta Chan, full PPR. So, okay, you're giving me some context here. You have JT. So you have Jonathan Taylor, Rashad White, and Swift. You're currently 3-0. So you traded B-Rob and Shakir for a Chan. So you upgraded here at the running back position. I kind of like the other side. I'm not a big Chan guy. I know I'm alone on that. And hey, he probably would have set the world on fire with 2 under center. Now he's seen a lot of stack boxes. I just don't feel like I don't even want to say it. I just didn't think that he could hold up over the full course of the year with those touches. But so far he is. He's getting a lot of touches. We'll see what happens when Raheem Mostert is back. But anyways, I like Brian Robinson Jr. and I like Shakir. But, you did upgrade. I do like a Chan more than B-Rob. And I assume you're okay at wide receiver. So you traded Brian Robinson Jr. and Shakir for a Chan. You're in a full point PPR league. So now you're going to roll out JT and a Chan. Yeah, I'm a little sour on Swift and White. So I think you did something there pretty positive. is slight upgrade over B-Rob. Of course, we like B-Rob a lot this week with no Eckler, but Eckler's very much involved when you got a running quarterback in Jaden Daniels. So I think he did pretty good there, man. Off to a 3-0 start. All right, Mr. Wumbo in the house. I was going to start Odunze over Kirk at wide receiver, but with Keenan Allen returning, should I swap back to Kirk? I really like Rome this week, despite Keenan Allen returning. I have Rome ahead of Keenan. I did expect after I saw yesterday he was practicing when I reshuffled my rankings. I still had Keenan. How I have Kirk one spot ahead of Rome and Dunes. I have Kirk at 31. I have Rome at 32. And I have Keenan Allen. Where do I have Keenan Allen? I actually got to search for this guy. I have Keenan Allen at 41. So, yeah. You can do Kirk. I'm slightly into Kirk there over Keenan or over Rome. I think that does it, guys. We hung out for a little bit. These were some of the starts I had, and some of them pretty obvious, but Gino and Caleb in a super flex because I had him as a sit in super flex leagues, I think after week 2. So just wanted to bring him back up in case anybody was following my work. He's second in pass attempts, and he is he's got a good spot here against the Rams. Like, the offensive line is not doing him any favors. I don't know if they're going to keep chucking, but again, second in pass attempts. The Chicago Bears are top 5 in pass percentage, and the Rams have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks, the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers, and they rank 31st in pass DVOA over FTN Fantasy. Mentioned Aaron Jones when he gave the props earlier. Aaron Jones is in a pretty good spot. Yeah, fun revenge spot, but 90-plus rushing yards in 2 of his 3 games. He's averaging 100 total yards. The Packers have coughed up the 5th most receiving yards to backs. He has 12 catches, and they've already allowed 2 100-yard rushers. Brian Robinson Jr., right? He's looked good. He's run the ball good. Arizona struggled against running backs over the past couple of years. A little bit better this year, but no Austin Eckler in this game. Zach Moss coming off a season-high 97 total yards, 17 touchdowns, and again, 5 catches for 39 yards. He had a top 10 finish at the running back position. The Panthers have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, and they ranked 27th in rush DVOA. There wasn't a team that allowed more touchdowns to the running back position on the ground last year than Carolina. Deontay, pretty obvious, but, a top 12 wide receiver. He's relevant again, right? Dalton gave him 14 targets last week, caught 8 of them for 122 yards, scored a touchdown at 36% target share, which is such a healthy number. Maybe unsustainable, but we'll see. There's no Adam Thielen this week. George Pickens, Darnell Mooney, and then get into some of the dart throws that I had here. Like, Darnell Mooney is a guy that's, if you're looking for somebody, maybe Devontae Adams you had on the roster. You're still looking for replacements for AJ or Debo or Kupp or Puka. Maybe you had a Olave here, would popped up on the injury report. So he's got 15 targets, 154 yards, and a touchdown in his last 2 games. Looking like he's going to be a big part of this offense, more so than Pitts. Got London and Mooney there. For Wilson, I think he's got more touchdown upside than Greg Dortch, but again, no Trey McBride this week. Matchup is great against Washington. They've allowed a league-high 9 touchdowns to wide receivers. Other dart throws here, I mentioned Xavier Legette. That's a guy that I'm on his catch prop at over 2.5 and his receiving yards. I think we'll see a little bit more from him. Chuba Hubbard over 2.5 catches as well. Zach Ertz, Dalton Schultz, we had that conversation earlier. Tyler Conklin, he was quiet week 1. Chasing tight ends is not good. You chase Hunter Henry in week 2. What happened? Nothing. In week 3, he didn't do anything. It's a lot more Hooper than Hunter Henry. He traced Cole Kmet this week. What do you get? I don't know. Maybe Gerald Everett or just nothing, right? It's tough to chase. You're playing this chasing game, but Conklin did have a good game last week. There's some good corners in Denver, right? So maybe he gets a little bit more run this week, and Ertz. So for me, tight ends this week, ranking them, I got Goddard at 1, Kittle, Ferguson was 3, Kelsey's 4, Bowers will move ahead of him now with Devontae Adams news, Dalton Kincaid, Laporta, Kyle Pitts, and then I got Andrews in there. I think that he may show up just because Bills have struggled in the middle of the field, but yikes. It's just still wouldn't start him over like the small floors of Ertz and Freiermuth, but I do have Schultz one spot ahead of Kmet with the return of Keenan Allen. I think that with no tank dollars, maybe a chance for a little bit of run there for him. So any final questions before we get out of here? Deesh, thank you. Appreciate you, brother. It's good to be back. We'll do live shows on Friday. Thanks a lot. No worries at all. You got CD. Okay, so this was the rest. Is this the rest of your team? Yeah, you got CD, Godwin, Higgins, and Cup as your wide receivers. McBride as your tight end. So you got a replacement there for McBride this week. Keeper league, and you get to keep H-Hunt. You can keep Devon Chan for 15th round. Giddy up. You don't need my help, T. Hamilton. Looks like you know what you're doing over there. All right, guys. For those that are just popping in, we did give some picks earlier. These are the ones. Marvin Harrison Jr. over 67 receiving yards. Aaron Jones over 56 rushing yards. Nico Collins over 74. Also like Diggs over 60. Deontay Johnson over 60. George Pickens over 46. And Terry McLaurin over 45. We have some touchdown props here. We're going back to Marvin Harrison Jr. for a third straight week. We're going back to Chris Godwin for a third straight week. They keep scoring. Why not? We're going back to Jamar Chase we had last week. We're going back to Amari Cooper we had last week. We do have some new dudes in here. Terry McLaurin at plus 200, Rashee Rice at plus 160, Stephon Diggs at plus 115. Trying to find value these days for touchdowns is tough. I think I did find some there with Godwin and Cooper. Dallas Goedert at plus 220. Rome Odunze, I actually see now at plus 310 over at DraftKings, and then Xavier Legette is a little bit of a long shot there at 3-1. Appreciate you hanging out with Jake and I as well. All right, guys, enjoy the football. Have any questions at all, leave them there in the comment section. I'll circle back on these videos. Rankings will be updated here today and then updated again Sunday morning, but I'll circle back on these videos. And of course, you can always reach out at Mean Streets FTN at gmail.com. Survivor stuff, I'm going with the Jets. I think the Jets and the Chiefs. You could roll with San Fran, but what I'll say is the biggest favorite each week is just straight up lost. They've just lost the football game. One more on the way out. Okay. RBs are Hall, Kamara, Etienne, Ford. My wide receivers are London, Rice, Neighbors, Godwin, and my tight end is Bowers and Goddard. Would you do Etienne and London for Brian Robinson and Debo? Yeah, I like that. So you would have Hall, Kamara, and then you would have Brian Robinson instead of ETN. I like that. I think I may like B-Rob more than ETN rest of the year. It's close. You know, you're going to get some catches from ETN, but man, Jacksonville looks like a bloody mess. But a nice upgrade here over London. Yeah, buying low on Debo, maybe taking advantage of some managers. You really take advantage of some 0-3 managers at this time of the season. So yeah, then you would have a Rice, Neighbors, and Debo. I like that. And Godwin, yeah, I like it. I would do it. I think like you're downgrading a touch, maybe a touch to B-Rob, but maybe not. And then you're upgrading Debo from London. Right? Yeah. I like that trio of wideouts and Rice, Neighbors. These guys are top 12 wide receivers, top 10 rest of the way. Godwin maybe as well, at least a high end two. And then we know what Debo can do. I like that. You're rolling the two tight ends. Don't love that, but think it's okay. Everybody else needs a tight end. You may be able to sell one of those guys. And then I would maybe sell high on Goddard. And then maybe you can even get better at the position, or you can just hold on and do what you're doing there. Because it seems like you got a pretty good squad. All right. Appreciate you guys. Again, comments in the YouTube section, and I will answer them. And meanstreetsftn at gmail.com. Alrighty. Have a good one. Let the winners be yours. Peace.